The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord.
A certain Pharisee invited Jesus to dine with him, and he entered the Pharisee's house and reclined at table. Now there was a sinful woman in the city who learned that he was at table in the house of the Pharisee. Bringing an alabaster flask of ointment, she stood behind him at his feet weeping, and began to bathe his feet with her tears. Then she wiped them with her hair, kissed them, and anointed them with the ointment. When the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, "If this man were a prophet, he would know what sort of woman this is who is touching him, that she is a sinner." Jesus said to him in reply, "Simon, I have something to say to you." "Tell me, teacher," he said. Two people were in debt to a certain creditor. One owed 500 days' wages, and the other owed 50. Since they were unable to pay the debt, he forgave it for both. Which of them will love him more? Simon said in reply, "The one, I suppose, whose larger debt was forgiven." He said to him, "You have judged rightly." Then he turned to the woman and said to Simon, "Do you see this woman? When I entered your house, you did not give me water to wash my feet, but she has bathed them with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You did not give me a kiss, but she has not ceased kissing my feet since the time I entered. You did not anoint my head with oil, but she anointed my feet with ointment. So I tell you, her many sins have been forgiven. Hence, she has shown great love. But the one to whom little is forgiven loves little." He said to her, "Your sins are forgiven." The others at table said to themselves, "Who is this who even forgives sins?" But he said to the woman, "Your faith has saved you. Go in peace." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus.
Kind of interesting week. I have kind of gotten a message coming through from various sources about the importance of community and teamwork. Monday I took my brother to get a cataract operation, and so he needed someone to drive him. And I went to Novi and I drove him to Ann Arbor and drove him back home, then came back here. And he's a retired anesthesiologist, and where he went, he knew people still there who had worked when he was in charge of that very facility. And as we were driving down there, he talked about the value of teamwork, and he said, "I used to tell them that even the people on the team that no one ever sees are really important. For example, the people that sterilize the equipment, that if you don't do that, you don't see them in the operating room, but if you get something that's put in that's contaminated, then suddenly you're in a whole lot of trouble, and the best surgeon in the world has a disaster on his hands." So that teamwork message kind of got into me. Well, then on Tuesday night, I was invited to give an invocation at the Jewish Federation was giving 3 awards, and one of them was to a parishioner from Christ the King. And as I was getting ready for it, I was aware that the famous Rabbi Hillel had said the following thing. He said, "If I am not for myself, who will be? If I am only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when?" And a later time, another scholar added another verse to it that said, "If not with others, how?" And so, I just was kind of sensing that these people that were being honored were people that worked with others to help make the community of Flint a healthier, happier, more spirit-filled place. Well, then Senator Don Regan, whose name the award, it was named for him, it was the 25th anniversary. And he got up on stage and he asked various people to come up on stage with him. And he described how he was a grad student, I think at Yale, studying public policy or something. And as a young man, and somebody from Flint called and said, we want you to come back and run for Congress, as a Republican. And of course in Flint, that wasn't a really easy thing to do because it was very heavily Democratic. But his family was well known, and so he came back and he worked hard, and he had some of the people he had on stage with him were people that worked very hard for him, and he wound up getting elected to Congress. Well, and later, of course, he was a senator for many years, but he said, and then he accomplished a lot of things, and the one that was especially pertinent the other night, because it was a Jewish group, was that he helped to free Soviet Jews who were being tortured. They'd get put in prison if they wanted to leave the Soviet Union, or put in mental hospitals, and it was just a horrible situation. And he worked very hard to get that changed so they could get out of the country. And then once some of them got out of the country, they would come to Flint, and this was a fundraiser to help pay for people to be resettled, which is a very arduous task to resettle a family, get them comfortable with language, get them work skills, get them all those kinds of things. And so he said, do you think I could do any of that stuff? Do you think I could do any of that stuff? He said, absolutely not. He said, I had to have a team, I had to have a lot of people, and so he just really, stressed that. And as I was especially caught by the first reading today, St. Paul, who felt he was the least of the apostles because he had been such a persecutor of Christians, says reluctantly but I am an apostle by the grace of God. He said, I am what I am by the grace of God. And you are what you are, and I am what I am, and Deacon Mike is what he is, and our musician likewise, by the grace of God. And part of the grace of God is the teamwork that we do. And so this is, as I think about Catholic Charities, it's not a bunch of people doing solos, but it's trying to make a symphony with one sound is what symphony means. I was watching a leadership tape one time, and it was led by a conductor of the Boston Symphony, and he said it came to him one day that he was the only person on the stage that doesn't make a sound. And that he would only look good if he could help everybody to make their sound. And I think the same thing, you can have a brilliant therapist, or you can have somebody that people say when they give out clothes, what a kind person or whatever. But the whole aura, the whole spirit of Catholic Charities is very much being a symphony, really being in harmony. And I suppose Vicki is the conductor in some ways, but all of us have a part, and all of us try to generally share it, and all of us need to influence each other with love and respect and a real sense of we are in this together, or we have a disaster on our hands, and people begin to get a feeling. You've maybe had to deal with institutions where there's just something not quite right, and you may know people, and this is a good person or that's a good person, but there's just something not right. And so I think that's the job of all of us involved with Catholic Charities, is not just to do our individual task really well, which is important, but also just to have that sense of supporting each other, listening to each other, trying to be as generous as we can in that supportive role, so that we really are a team that can help to carry the poor of Flint until they're able to do what they, maybe will be able to do later. And the church is that way. You've been in parishes where you have some good individuals, but where it's just not a very warm place, and everybody's zigging when everybody else is zagging. And you've also seen congregations where there's a real unified, cohesive, joy-filled service that's coming from that. And it's interesting as we look at the apostles, which was Jesus' team. You've got Judas, but you even have really holy men who later become, saints that we revere, who are arguing about who's the greatest. And one's mother goes and says, well, when you come into your kingdom, can you make sure that my sons sit one on your right and one on your left, and all that kind of stuff. And so it's just, in every organization, there's those kinds of overly me kind of things that can happen. And so, I just encourage you in whatever ministry you have with Catholic Charities, and as you encounter the poor, to have that unified, cohesive teamwork that helps to convey throughout the whole organization, from the janitor to the CEO. It's all conveying the same message to the poor and to the community, that we're here to serve, we're here in the footsteps of Jesus, we love each other, and we're moving on to doing what we are by God's grace, because I am what I am, and we are what we are, as Paul says, by the grace of God.